Welcome to the second edition of Elmhurst Now, the story and the stories of the people of Elmhurst, Illinois. I'm Ken Bartels, and with me tonight for our second edition is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry, John Quigley. Welcome, John, and I wanted to start, as you well know, in our first edition of Elmhurst Now. I had the opportunity to sit and chat with Mayor Pete DeCiani, whom you know very well. And I was struck in preparing for this program how much your life and Pete's life parallel each other in terms of your relationship to Elmhurst. And I thought a good way to start would be to let you talk just a bit about your history with this town.
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you for having me on the show. Well, Pete is the mayor. I just think I'm the mayor. But the comparisons don't end there. We were both pretty much born, raised, educated, and got our job history beginning in Elmhurst and maintaining in Elmhurst. So my family was a Chicago family of Irish and Catholic, Irish Catholic background and Italian Catholic background, much like Mayor DeCiani and the mayor before him, Mayor Marcucci. Not an uncommon combination in this locale. And when my mother was pregnant with me, oh, I hate to say this, almost 55 years ago, she decided it was time to move to the suburbs. And the boss of her plant happened to live in Elmhurst and owned a plant in Bellwood. And he suggested to my mother that she look in Elmhurst. And we found a home out on Washington, not far from York and St. Charles. And back then, Ken, the empty lots on York Street were not to be believed. Had I known then what I know now about property in Elmhurst, I would have convinced my mother to buy several of those open parcels. Went to school at Immaculate Conception Grammar School, Immaculate Conception High School, and then I decided it was time for me to travel away to college. So I went out across Wilder Park and went to Elmhurst College. And I graduated from there in '77. Shortly after that, became the sports editor for Press Publications newspapers, based here in Elmhurst and going throughout the western suburbs. Left for a while, came back when the college came calling, and I was able to go to work for my alma mater. And I'm trying to think, my boss. Who was my boss back then? Oh,
I think it was me.
There was this guy called Ken Bartels, who I got to work for 9 years at the college. And Ken got me, I'll use you in a third-party sense here, Ken got me involved in the Elmhurst Chamber. He had seen my work with the Chamber of Commerce in Portage, Indiana, where I was out running a chain of newspapers before coming to the college. He got me involved in the chamber. And then when my predecessor in office, Tachi Taronis, passed away on the day before the golf outing in 1999, happened to be the golf outing I was chairing, Ken ultimately came to me and said, you know, I think that job would be perfect for you. And he wasn't the only one who said that, and that was 10 years ago. And I've been with the chamber that past decade and enjoying every minute of it.
Well, I've not been referenced in the third party all that often, but it wasn't bad.
Well, John likes to do that.
Well, I'll have to ask John about that sometime. In your role as chamber president and CEO, we want to talk about economic development tonight. Why is it important for Elmhurst to be thinking about it constantly as it has in the past and into the future? What does it exactly mean? What does it entail? Why should the average Elmhurstonian think about it, or for that matter, watch this program with some interest? And I think I want to start by just simply saying that you and I both know that the city of Elmhurst has always been very proactive in this area, and a high level of public-private partnerships, starting with the old Economic Development Corporation, which then morphed into the current Elmhurst Development Commission, which is a city commission. And the public-private nature of the city, I wish you'd comment on that.
Sure. Let me first say, for the average resident out there, well, why economic development? What's so important about it? The pat answer is, if you stand still, you're falling behind. There's always something new out there. There's always something different out there. And if you think you can live in a cocoon, and that cocoon isn't going to change while all around you is changing, you're sadly mistaken. And if you wait too long, by the time you realize your error, you will never recover. And there are communities around us that have never recovered. If you look at an Elmhurst, Mayor Marcucci liked to point out to the Chicago Tribune article in the early 90s that basically called the downtown of Elmhurst dead. It was never coming back. It was killed by the malls. The one in Oak Brook, the one in Schaumburg, the one in Woodfield, the one in Lombard, and it just never was going to come back. Well, it did. But it did because there was a concerted effort to make it come back, to put together programs, to put together parcels of land, to make it advantageous for businesses to come into our community. It's one thing to say, isn't Elmhurst great? It's a beautiful community. Who wouldn't want to come here? I agree with you. I've basically lived and worked and gone to school my whole life in Elmhurst. So it's a feeling I have. But I also understand that if somebody's going to sink $100,000 or $200,000 of their hard-earned income or a loan into a business, they want more than that feel good. They want to make sure there's going to be a return on their dollar. And if the community next to you has a lower tax rate, or the community on the other side of you is offering incentives to bring in businesses, and you just say, well, they should want to come here because we're special, you are going to lose out on those businesses. And by the time you realize it, it's going to be too late. I look at some parcels in a community next door to us. An example would be in Villa Park, the old Ovaltine plant. That plant sat there for almost 30 years. And yet, if you look from an economic development perspective, had Villa Park thought about it in a different way, they might have created an indoor mall on the Ovaltine site. And I can guarantee you, if they had, in that proximity to York and St. Charles in '83, they would have been raking in sales tax dollars. And I guarantee you, Elmhurst residents would be crossing the border to go shopping there.
Well, I think the important part of that particular example is the fact that Elmhurst has been proactive when they've had an opportunity to do things within their boundaries, including recruiting businesses, whether it's to City Center or York and Villette or Spring Road on the retail side, or for that matter, into the industrial park. The Elmhurst Development Commission, of course, is currently stressing three things. They're stressing retention. I've personally made a number of retention calls throughout the city because it's much easier to keep a business you have than recruit a new business. The second, of course, the second emphasis of the commission is recruitment. And the third is the marketing and promotion of the entire town. And I know you've heard stories, and you and I are both accused on a regular basis of being over-the-top cheerleaders for Elmhurst.
Guilty.
So, guilty, and not anything I apologize for either. But at the same time, what kind of magic, or if not magic, what are the things that make Elmhurst someplace that should be attractive to businesses that are not here currently?
Well, I hate to go with the old real estate mantra, location, 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 but you can't find a better location. Elmhurst is actually situated in the center of the Chicagoland area. You put a pin in Elmhurst, draw a circle that encompasses Chicago at the lakefront, and you basically have Elmhurst at the center of everything. The highway accessibility, the freeway accessibility, the state route accessibility. Then you toss in proximity to O'Hare Airport, Midway Airport. One of my favorite jokes is you can get to Wisconsin in under an hour, you can get to Indiana in under an hour, you can get out to DeKalb in under an hour, and sometimes you can even get into Chicago in under an hour. You can go ahead and laugh at that one if you care to.
Well, I found it humorous, but we don't have a lot of time, so I'm trying not to laugh as much as I probably would.
And then you put together the other things that go into place. Elmhurst has a fabulous public school system, one of the few in the area where elementary, middle, and high school are all banded together as opposed to being different districts. They have a community unit district. We have a fabulous park district that the boundaries of the school, the parks, and the city are nearly contiguous, which creates an atmosphere of banding together. Then you toss in one of the top hospitals in the country in our backyard, putting in a $500 million redevelopment, by the way. You toss in one of the best small liberal arts schools in the country, Elmhurst College, my alma mater as well. You toss that into the mix. You put all those things together. Elmhurst is the only community that, of the ones that border us, that has a vibrant downtown because of that concerted effort. But not only that, there's little business districts that still thrive and survive. York and Villette, Spring Road, that grew up around rail lines that have long since disappeared and become the Illinois Prairie Path. Those small business districts are still thriving. We have 2 different industrial park areas. We have many other business districts. There's some on Butterfield, Elmhurst Crossing at 83 in St. Charles, North Avenue and 83, North York Road down to Grand itself with all our car dealerships,
all
and
of the
Lake
various
Street.
all of the various places that you've mentioned are part of the ongoing effort. And right now we need to go to break. And when we come back from break, I'll be talking to John about the Elmhurst Business Alliance and what that is and how it works, and also the Shop By campaign that many of you will be hearing about in the future. This is Elmhurst Now. We'll be right back.
Visit elmhurst.org to explore the new City of Elmhurst website. Find out the latest Elmhurst news, pay utility bills and parking tickets, report concerns, and much more. Elmhurst.org is an ideal way to discover what Elmhurst offers your business, your family, your life.
Quartz Plus is a community facility offering quality health and fitness amenities, such as a 75-foot indoor pool, 6 indoor tennis courts, an indoor climbing wall, an indoor jogging track, a free weight training area, advanced exercise equipment, and many other state-of-the-art features. Call 630-833-5064 for your tour of the facility and for membership information. Quartz Plus Health and Fitness Center. The members speak for themselves.
Welcome back to Elmhurst Now. We have John Quigley, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Elmhurst Chamber with us, and we're talking about economic development. And John, before we went to break, I said we'd come back and talk about something called the Elmhurst Business Alliance. Now, the Elmhurst Business Alliance is the city, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Elmhurst City Center. And obviously you represent the Chamber of Commerce. I sit there as sort of a special advisor. How does the Business Alliance work? What does it do?
Well, the idea is the Chamber is the largest organization representing business in Elmhurst. City Center is the downtown business group that's funded through SSA and TIF dollars. And then the city obviously has a large interest in what goes on in the business community at large, as does the Chamber. So those 3 entities get together on a regular basis and go over all kinds of issues related to economic development, business promotion, business retention, business recruitment. In some instances, they may seem really weird, but for example, out of that business alliance, we began talking about whether or not York should be a 2-way street and Addison should be a 2-way street again, as opposed to the 1-way they were created long ago to move as much traffic as quickly as possible through the downtown. Well, during that review, one of the things that came out of it was identifying additional places for parking in the downtown, and it also identified the need to change commuter parking and shopper parking in the downtown. And so coming out of that, even though the traffic patterns didn't change, additional parking spaces were created, and the timeline on free parking went from 2 hours to 3 hours. We still, on some occasions, have some problems with 3 hours, but it's better than 2 hours.
Well, and of course, the Alliance also has the opportunity to focus in on ways that the entities can partner and other economic entities in the city as well. And I know for a fact that the Business Alliance has had a direct impact on economic development, including the fact that there's conversation about a not only shop in Elmhurst, but buy in Elmhurst effort. And I know that the chambers started it and had conversations about it. The Business Alliance is talking about it. And it is a way that every citizen of Elmhurst can help the city. Now, we've heard a great deal about it, the economic difficulties not only that the city faces, but across the country. But talking specifically about Elmhurst, we're talking about the generation of retail sales. And a shop-buy effort, in whatever form it ultimately takes, is a very important part of economic development going forward. I know you're very passionate on this topic. You have some great examples, and I'd like you to share them.
Sure. Let me start with some numbers. If the city's got a $50 million budget in its general fund, in a given year, 50% of that budget is paid through taxes. Only 20% of that 50 comes from property taxes. So 80% of that remaining $20 million is generated through a variety of sales taxes and other service fees and taxes. That's a huge chunk of money. And up until recent years, the city was generating $9, $10, $11 million a year just in the sales tax side of it, with anywhere from 30 to 40% being generated by our car dealerships. I told the mayor I would mention this. I saw him the other day. He just bought a new Prius from Elmhurst Toyota, and I can tell you that the money the city gets from that purchase exceeds what a property owner with a $400,000 home pays for an entire year in tax to the city. Not their entire tax bill,
yes,
but the city portion of their tax bill. The purchase of that one vehicle exceeded what a $400,000 home generates for the city. That shows you how important that tax is. Unfortunately, those tax numbers have been dropping. We're going to probably be under 8 million this year, maybe as low as 7.5 million in terms of those sales taxes. So it becomes incumbent upon residents that anytime they want to make a purchase, that they understand the impact of their purchase when they leak those sales tax dollars out of town. So for example, somebody may go to a bargain outlet by which they buy their toilet paper, toothpaste, paper goods, all those kinds of things, and walk out and go, wow, I saved $30 or $40 had I gone to a Jewel, a Dominic's, whatever the competitor might have been. But the backside of that is the sales tax they paid left the town as well. So you may have saved it on your sales, you may have saved money on your sales receipt, but ultimately you may feel it in property tax dollars or other fees and charges to you as a property owner or a resident. So there are a number of programs jumping out about the country to buy local. One of them is called the 350 Project, and it's pretty simple in scope. It says 3 times a month, spend $50 at a local business. That's what it encourages residents to do. And over the course of residents doing that on a regular basis, they will be regularly supporting those businesses. And while we all love national chains in our community, and they do produce very high sales tax revenue, the reality is that a national chain contributes back about 20% into its community, while the local merchant, who we'll call mom and pop, for lack of a better term, who has invested their life savings or their family's life savings in a business, they tend to give back way more. More of their employees are from town. More of their purchases are in town. They are the people being hit up for donations by charities and schools and other organizations. So they give back, and this is a key way to show residents that while you may pay $1 more here for something, ultimately that's good because it stayed here and it reworks itself back into the system.
Well, it's an economic multiplier theory that says if you if you buy and spend local, that dollar will regenerate itself several different times in the ways that it exchanges the goods and services exchange, as well as the pure momentum that it can build for your community. Now, no one is suggesting that no one can ever buy anything out of town, or
No.
that would be a fallacy to even think about that. But the practical reality is if you can buy it in Elmhurst, you are doing yourself a favor as a member of this community by doing so. You're not doing the city a favor or any of the other entities in town. You're doing yourself a favor. And when you couple that by the 40-some thousand people in Elmhurst and the businesses and all of the social services, all of which spin and generate that money, it becomes a very significant thing, as you well know.
Well, on the car purchase side, we've gotten some numbers. And for example, last year in Elmhurst, people with Elmhurst addresses, there were about 6,000 of them who bought new cars last year. Only about 1,500 of them bought them in Elmhurst. The tax on a car that goes to the local community is about $100 for every $10,000 of car value. So if you say the average car purchase is $30,000, that's $300 for every one of those purchases that left our community. And for some of the homeowners who bought cars outside the community, they actually gave to a competing community more money to the local that municipality through the sales tax of their new car purchase than they gave to their own municipality through their property taxes. And I don't know that they clearly understand that. As you said, you can't buy everything in town. That's understandable. For example, if you want a Cadillac, you can't buy a Cadillac in Elmhurst. We don't have a dealership. But it's important that you look at as many purchases as you can and make that conscious decision and know that when you've left town because you had no other option. I can tell you a number of times while I've shopped out of town, and there's a difference between shopping and buying.
Absolutely.
While I've shopped out of town, many times I've come back into town and gone to the local business that was selling the same product and said, here's what I got offered at this location. I'd much prefer to buy from you. And I haven't had one of those businesses say to me, thanks, no thanks. They've all said, we'll match that offer.
Absolutely. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, I want to talk about both retention and recruitment. This is Elmhurst Now. We're talking with John Quigley about economic development in the city of Elmhurst. We'll be back in a moment.
Hello, my name is Battalion Chief Don Novak with the Elmhurst Fire Department. Did you know that over 85% of the child passenger safety seats are installed incorrectly? Here at the Elmhurst Fire Department, we offer a free child passenger safety seat inspection. All you need to do is call City Hall at area code 630-530-3090 for an appointment. Area code 630-530-3090. Because we care about your children.
Where can you find something unique, trendy, or classic? Right here in Elmhurst City Center, the perfect downtown destination. We have novelty shops, high fashion boutiques, and a wide variety of restaurants. Our historically restored movie theater and boutique bowling alley provide entertainment for the whole family. Elmhurst City Center caters to customers with special sales and a super selection of merchandise. Our shop owners are friendly and very willing to please. And there is plenty of free parking in conveniently located parking decks. Elmhurst City Center also sponsors exciting events throughout the year. They are great fun for all. And don't forget the popular Elmhurst City Center gift certificate, available for every occasion and redeemable at over 140 locations. Elmhurst City Center, where you'll discover good finds and good times.
This is Elmhurst Now. stories of the people of Elmhurst, Illinois. I'm Ken Bartels with John Quigley, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Elmhurst Chamber. John, before we went to break, I said when we came back, we'd talk about recruitment and retention. I'll just say a word about retention. In my role as a part-time consultant with the city, I am making a great many retention visits on behalf of the Elmhurst Development Commission, rather. And what I'm finding is that things are starting to get better. And I think I can say that universally. Now, we're not back to peaks. We'd like things to be better, but almost across the city, industrial park, retail areas, service areas, I'm hearing a cautious optimism in terms of the businesses we have here now. On the recruitment side, and I know the Chamber gets calls about coming to Elmhurst, are you getting similar feelings or not?
I think what happened was everybody prepared for the worst. So when they cut back to the bone. They didn't just slide back a little. They cut out all the extras. They cut out any extra employees, any extra inventory, all those kinds of things. And while the economy wasn't as good as people hoped it would be, it was probably a little better than they expected it to be. And now they're finding themselves going, ooh, I've got a little more business here. I may have to add an employee. I may have to open a little earlier, stay open a little later. And those numbers are kind of being followed across the country. We had a multi-chamber luncheon a couple weeks ago, and we had the chief economist for the Federal Reserve Bank talk about the economy. And he said, yeah, the growth is good. It's going to be about 2 to 2.5% this year. It might get close to 3% next year. It's not as good as the bounce back from the downturn in the 70s or the downturn in the 80s, of which we remember dramatically, standing in line with my car, hoping I could get gas before my car ran out. But the bounce back after both of those downturns was 6 to 8% in GDP. Some really nice dramatic growth. We're not going to see that. People are still worried because of the unemployment numbers, but historically unemployment numbers have always lagged. And so while unemployment's a little over 10 now, it's going to drop to 9.5, then 9. It's probably going to be 36 months. We lost 850,000 jobs. In Illinois alone, we've lost 325,000 jobs in the last decade. Those aren't real good numbers. But those people who have toughed it out are kind of seeing a culling of the herd, survival of the fittest. And as the economy starts to grow a little bit, those businesses will be ready to take advantage of that. And we've seen it in Elmhurst. We didn't take the same kind of housing drop that the rest of the state took, and even the rest of the county took. We didn't see the same kind of business closings that our neighbors have seen and the rest of the state has seen. And part of that is the diversity of what we have. We're not dependent on any one area of business to keep us afloat.
Well, as I talk to new businesses interested in relocating, we talk about location, we talk about the kind of community that Elmhurst has been historically, one with deep roots, one that is highly desirous in terms of people wanting to live here. People stay here. They live their entire lives here, of which both of us are pretty good examples, really. I wonder, though, if the economic development of the city is tied to any specific thing in your mind. I mean, we've talked about the incredible value over time of the car dealers and the value that they have brought to the city that a lot of citizens might never have realized and maybe are now for the very first time. Do you see a greater diversity coming out of this rebound? Or should we be looking to try and recruit back to the strengths that we've had historically?
Well, part of it would be don't be so dependent on the car sales, except now that there are going to be dramatically less car dealerships in this area, around the state, around the country, as the economy bounces back, there is the potential to reap those benefits. We sold as many cars in this country in 2009 as we did in 1969, with twice the population. That's only going to stay that way for maybe another year, and then you're going to start to see that car buying pick up again. It's going to be dramatic enough that a manufacturer like Volkswagen is coming back in this country for the first time in terms of manufacturing in this country for the first time in 30 years. They're actually going to build cars in this country. So we're in a good spot. We need to maximize what we do well, stay as diverse as we can. I think what residents don't understand is how all these things work together, how they all pull together to do it. Many people portray the vibrancy of their community by their downtown. If they have a vibrant downtown, they view it as we have a vibrant community. But in terms of sales tax dollars, our downtown probably only produces about 7% of the retail sales tax dollars. Car dealerships do more. Elmhurst Crossing Shopping Center does more. So there are bigger revenue producers on that scope, but it's still important to have a great downtown. And when you look at the communities around us that have lost their downtowns, and they're never coming back for those communities, it's hard for them. And in terms of economic development, I view it as economic redevelopment. We're an established community, we're landlocked. Pretty much every parcel's built out. There isn't a whole lot you can do. So it comes to economic redevelopment. Communities like Naperville merely bought up 1,500 acres of farmland and built another school and put up another subdivision. We don't have those options. We saw that when York High School had to be completely rebuilt and putting up
the same site.
Putting up a whole new high school on the same site while the existing high school was still there.
Right.
You know, and that means you really have to be creative in terms of what you're doing, in terms of putting together parcels. You can't do it just piecemeal. You can't say, oh, that building's 60 years old and it's going to be torn down. What do we put up there? You may have to say, well, what about the parcel to the north of it, the parcel to the south of it, parcel to the east of it, or the parcel to the west of it? You've got to be more holistic in your approach.
We've only got a couple minutes left, our time together. Anything about economic development that you really get excited about personally in your role with the Chamber?
Oh, well, yeah, I like the fact that it's always a challenge and it's ever changing. You know, 10 years ago, I went to a city council meeting when Jewel was doing their rebuilding, going to rebuild the downtown Jewel, one of two Jewels in DuPage County that hadn't been rebuilt yet. And the city offered to tear down some stuff and pay for that as part of that development project. Jewel was putting in $6 million.
Right.
City was going to spend up to about $180,000 for some demolition costs. I came out of that and said, is there something we can do for small business, for the mom and pop guy? And we created a central business district retail grant program that offered $10,000 grants a year. And we've been doing it ever since. During that time, 75% of the grant recipients have stayed in business. They're operating in the downtown, which helps explain why we only have a 3% vacancy rate in our downtown. Each of those businesses put in anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 of their own money as part of their developments. And some of them put in millions when you're talking like the York Theater, which got a grant. So you see that kind of development. It's big, it's important. But we may not do grant programs anymore because in this economy, in this change, we may have to go away from that and do something different.
Well, hopefully we can do grant programs and hopefully we can continue to move the economic development engine. John, I appreciate you joining me tonight on the second edition of Elmhurst Now, and I'm sure we'll be talking again as well. My notes about economic development is that it's absolutely vital to Elmhurst's future. It's complicated, but it's doable, and it's everybody's business. You, I, everyone who lives in town or works in town needs to be thinking about promotion and thinking about marketing and thinking about buying and selling here in Elmhurst. I think it's enlightened self-interest, to say the least. But thank you for being here.
I've got to put you up on a billboard with that idea. Thanks, Ken. My pleasure.
This is Elmhurst Now. We've been talking with John Quigley, the president and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And for John, I'm Ken Bartels, and Mayor DeCiani will join me next time for the 3rd edition of Elmhurst Now. Thanks for watching.
Have you visited the Elmhurst Public Library lately? The Kids Library is a wonderful place, especially with our many exciting children's programs. The 2nd floor is home to the adult and teen collections. From research to magazines, we've got it. We have more than 80 computers throughout the building. Or bring your own laptop. The entire building has wireless access. Need a quiet place to study? Try our silent study rooms. Book one of our spacious meeting rooms for your group. Our convenient book drop and drive-up window make picking up and returning library materials a breeze. And don't forget, EPL is open 24/7 online at elmhurstpubliclibrary.org.
Hi, I'm Elmhurst Police Chief Steve Neubauer. Elmhurst is a great place to live and work. However, we are not crime-free. Many people in our community become victims of crime simply because they did not lock their belongings. I would ask you to do 2 things. First, lock your car, house, and bike. Secondly, call 911 to report suspicious activity to the Elmhurst Police Department. The Elmhurst Police Department reminds you to lock it or lose it.
On April 1st, 2010, our nation will be counted. Every person, whoever they are, wherever they live. And what we learn will transform what we know about ourselves. The 2010 census, it's a new portrait of America. The 2010 census is an exciting milestone for America. It promises to deliver accurate information about our diverse and growing population. And it's important for the future of every community. Census data will be used to allocate over $300 billion in federal funds every year.
The 2010 census will be important to the nation because it is the foundation of our democracy.
The census, no matter when it is the consummate partnership between local, state, and federal government.
Communities use the data to plan for their future, like disaster and emergency services, healthcare services, schools, transportation, libraries, senior centers, and more. The 2010 census builds on the success of previous censuses and is the best planned and most well-researched census ever. And innovations, like a new short census form, will help to make it even more successful. The 2010 census, it's easy to complete. Data are always confidential and safeguarded. It's important.
This census is a commitment to the American way of life. To be counted as a resident of the United States, I think, is one of the proudest things that can happen to you in this country. It's important. Stand up for yourself, be counted, let people know you're out there.
The 2010 census, it's a new portrait of America.
A photograph, a time and place, a picture holds a moment's space, a portrait of hopes and dreams, telling the story of our times. And for now we know we're changing fast, and for now it's clear that we've left the past. America, let's celebrate. We're proud and we stand tall together. A portrait of us all.
The 2010 census. It's a new portrait of America.